Is James Bond truly a relic of the Cold War? Or as Judi Dench's M calls him, a sexist, misogynist dinosaur? Or does his turn in GoldenEye breathe fresh creative and commercial life into the series? I think the answer lies somewhere in between. While a lot has changed globally and politically since last we saw 007, he's still the same old spy that we've come to love at this point. Mostly. One major difference between then and now is Bond's new face. Pierce Brosnan, an Irish actor best known for playing television's Remington Steele, has officially taken over the role from Timothy Dalton. Film critic Roger Ebert said of Brosnan's portrayal that he was somehow more sensitive, more vulnerable, and more psychologically complete, while also commenting on Bond's loss of innocence since previous films, triggered most likely by this film's gratuitous gun violence and explicit sex scene, the first of any Bond film, believe it or not. The only returning cast member from previous films is Desmond Llewellyn, once again playing Q. Along with the recasting of Bond, Moneypenny and M were recast as well, the latter played by a woman for the first time, English actress Dame Judi Dench. GoldenEye is also the first Bond film to be directed by a non-Brit, with New Zealand director Martin Campbell at the helm this time around. It's the first film of the series to utilize CGI, and it is also the first wholly original storyline that is not based on any of Ian Fleming's novels or short stories. However, the title, GoldenEye, is a reference to Ian Fleming's Jamaican estate. So sit back, get ready, and strap in as Colin, Harris, and I welcome Bond to the 1990s. This is the 17th official entry in Eon's 007 series, starring Pierce Brosnan as James Bond in 1995's GoldenEye.
What's the matter, James? No glib remark? No pithy comeback? Why? Hilarious question. Particularly from you. It wasn't God who gave me this face.
See how it feels when 007 meets N64.
Am I supposed to feel sorry for you? No. You're supposed to die for me.
GoldenEye. That's all I got.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
Great
thank
work.
you.
Tim
got rhymes.
Sick beat.
Yeah, I just want to address one thing from Matt's monologue. It is possible that she was suggesting that the British government used dinosaur DNA to enhance James Bond, and that it's in no way a reference to his sexism or his age.
I think it was that was like a vestigial artifact from the Michael Crichton version of the script in a very early draft.
Jurassic Park was so hot when this movie came out that they just wanted to get the word dinosaur in here.
Exactly.
Just every time you say
Kids will
dinosaur,
love
it adds 10 million to the box office.
Yeah. It's like, we know James Bond is cool, but there's a younger market we haven't tapped into yet. They think dinosaurs are cool. They think a secret agent that is part dinosaur would be really cool.
Secret agent riding a dinosaur. I think that was actually a plot of a James Bond Jr. episode of him riding a dinosaur.
Yeah, probably.
All right, let's do our intros. I'm Matt McGregor. I'm here with Harris McCabe, Colin Shaw, and our lovely engineer Alex is back. Hey, you're on mic this time.
Hi, everyone.
Nice.
Nice.
Alex, have you seen this James Bond film?
Actually, as you were describing the film, I realized I watched the wrong one.
Oh.
Oh.
Which one did you watch?
All I could remember was the word gold, and so I watched the first part of Goldfinger.
Oh, well, that's probably why you fell asleep during it.
Yeah, because that movie sucks.
No, it's a very good movie, but it moves a little slowly. This one you probably would have been able to stay awake through.
This one is from the 1990s.
Yeah, it's a subtle difference, but a critical one.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, next time.
Yeah, next time.
Next time.
Next time.
All right, so let's get right into it. Obviously, we have a lot to say about this movie. Where should we begin? The cold open?
We could start with it. Well, we could start with the title, which I would just like to point out, all one word, yet camel case. The E and I is capitalized.
That's the word for
Yes,
that?
camel case or medial capitals.
I prefer medial capitals.
Yes, well, camel case is what the hip kids are calling it nowadays.
I feel like you're...
camel case just is another way of saying like capitalized, right?
It means the capitalization in the middle of it.
Oh.
Both of our last names are camel case.
That's right.
Or have medial capitals.
I feel like the camels don't get a say in this, and so
We're appropriating camel culture.
exactly.
Well, okay.
It's like that's not your hump to carry.
All right,
you know?
fine. Point taken.
Interesting. So what is it called when there's a little c or like a little? Is that
Well, that's a little c is part of what makes it. 'Cause
Camel
there's
case.
a little
Yeah.
because there's a little c and then there's a big, in my case, C. In your case, G.
G?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Or in this case, E for I.
So is that all you wanted to say about the title?
That's all I wanted to say about the title. There's other stuff to say about it, but
Well, I mean, I
that's-
do obviously mention that it's named after his Jamaican estate, which, by the way, I did not know this, and I found out recently. It has a lovely website. You can visit it and stay there.
Bono did his honeymoon there. That's why he wrote the song.
Right, I know. And
Do you have to be Bono to stay there? Because I am not willing to be Bono.
Maybe
You
the
basically have to
rates
do-
are lower
I
now.
mean,
like
I can be
rates-
insufferable, but not that
the
insufferable.
rates are what you would imagine it would cost to stay at like a high-end resort hotel, like somewhere tropical.
Well, that
it's
sounds
like
reasonable.
$600 a night.
That's where it starts.
Yeah.
But like, if you want like a super nice like room, it's like $1,300 or $1,400 a night, which is crazy. But it's awesome. You're on like a lagoon house. It's like over water.
Better than
it's like,
Fire Festival.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Also interesting that his estate was actually named for a plan that he had when he was in the basically the equivalent of the British Secret Service in World War II, when they were worried about Francisco Franco and Spain joining the Axis powers. So he had a whole plan in place to sort of destabilize that if they did that, which was called the GoldenEye plan. It was one that Ian Fleming, the spy, actually came up with.
I was confused about what the plan was. Like, he was going to destabilize Spain. That's what,
Well, it was mostly
all I got that it had to do with Spain. That's
Yeah,
all I got.
It was if the Nazis like invaded Spain. It was
well,
sort
yeah.
of like
If
their
Spain
backup.
decided to, or either decided to, or succumbed to a Nazi invasion, or just joined up with Italy and Germany, because Gibraltar was such a critical point,
Okay,
strategic point. They had to know. First of all, they wanted to know immediately if something happened, and they wanted to have like people on the ground already sort of ready to infiltrate and
But
sort of undermine
Spain
it.
was in civil war during World War II, right? Or right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So they were just going to like perpetuate civil war if the Nazis went in there because they wouldn't want Nazis to
I have
do
no
good
idea.
or
This
something.
could have been a really vague plan that nobody really cared about except for Ian Fleming, but he loved it so much that he gave it a cool name.
But
and
he-
they named
even
it.
Or maybe no one
that-
else
Couldn't let
had
it
a
go years
plan of
later.
any kind of plan at all. He's like,
Maybe
I'm the
he
only
was
one
like
planning this.
Maybe he was like the annoying guy in the office that kept on asking for like important stuff to do, and they were like,
Yeah.
I don't know, Jesus, give him Spain. That's not.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about this.
Have you,
shit.
have you ever seen Canadian
Ian,
Bacon?
leave me alone.
There's that one character who's like they didn't like him, so they sent him to the Canada desk. But then when they
But then
need
Canada
when they need
invades.
Canada conspiracy theories, he's like a gold mine.
But wasn't that GoldenEye operation? Wasn't that even named after something? Reflections in a GoldenEye or Reflections on a GoldenEye?
There,
Right,
there was
yeah.
something other.
That's something. I'm trying to look
maybe
it
a
up.
novel.
That's true. It was Reflections in a Golden Night, and it was Marlon Brando did the movie of the adaptation of the novel.
Yep. Yep.
This is all a big muddled mess. But we could talk a little bit about the making of the film and why it took 6 years to make before we jump into the plot.
Well, actually, I know something we should talk about before any of that. We should talk about the gun barrel sequence. It's the first thing we see,
Okay.
and it's very different in this
The
movie.
first CGI.
It's the first use of CGI in a James Bond movie, right?
They also sort of subtly redo the theme music there as well.
Right, exactly. So we'll get into the music. The soundtrack is a heavy talking point for this movie. I think I have it queued up on the computer there.
I mean, talk about if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. So basically, you want to take a song and you want to turn the notes of the song into like a laser firing through water inside of a tube of air that's made of metal that's really far away from you, but but then is somehow loud.
Yeah, conceptually, I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
I feel like they missed. I did love the CGI, though. I thought that was really cool. I thought it was like add a little flash to what was kind of...
Yeah, the reflection, like how it moves as the gun barrel moves.
It gave it real dimension, and it as opposed to some of the other VFX in this movie, it holds up pretty well, I think.
I think the VFX held up.
I think some of them
They
do.
didn't use a lot of CGI.
There was a lot of green screen that looked like...
They
green
used more miniatures than they ever
The
had
miniatures
before.
look great.
And
The miniatures
there's
did look
some
good.
good miniatures in there.
There's one part that I have beef with, and I'll bring it up because it's in the cold open.
But I mean, so I was telling Matt, I remember thinking that what they did with the music was genius when I saw this the first time. And now I still like it, but I think it sounds incredibly dated. As if you would never do that now. And that got us into talking about who did the music, which we should discuss now or save.
We can talk about it now. The guy, it's a composer named Eric Serra or Serra. I don't know. He's French, I think. He works primarily with Luc
I think it's just
Besson.
Eric Serra. I don't think you have to try to.
You don't have to French it up a little bit.
I like to French things up.
We'll roll the R then.
Serra.
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 There we go.
Serra. That's more
Eric
Latin.
Serra.
No. Only Harris is allowed to say it now.
You just let me know when you want me to say it for you.
Okay. How about now?
Eric Serra.
Great.
Right.
That sounds Middle Eastern.
Well, yes, there are Middle Easterners that live in France, Matt, okay?
And there are people who speak French in the Middle East.
Get over
too.
your perceptions here, your
Yeah.
misperceptions of French culture.
guys,
Come on.
guys, don't hold it against me.
All right.
Okay.
So what are we talking about?
Eric Serra
Eric Serra.
and his
And-
music.
So he did The
also-
Professional, The
Club
Fifth
Mix.
Element, the La Femme Nikita, and I think that's it of note. Oh, Lucy. Basically every Luc Besson movie.
I mean, I find it super interesting. I think this guy has an interesting career. La Femme Nikita, I remember, I've seen like so many promos for it just from having Sci-Fi Channel on in the 90s.
Are you talking about the TV show?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is
Oh,
the
you did
movie.
the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't do well. Whatever. It's I have
Yeah,
awareness.
totally
of it.
different
has
thing.
the same
Totally
name.
different thing.
Yeah, it has the same name. I have awareness of it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I
mean-
remember
I mean,
seeing
I
ads.
remember-
I think it's like Alias.
Didn't
I remember
USA
watching-
used to air Bond all the time? Were they the channel that played Bond
I
in the
think-
90s?
I think
was
it
feel like it
changed.
was
US.
TBS
I
a
thought
lot
it
of
was
times,
Turner.
yeah.
Sure.
So it was TBS or TNT, depending on what they were going for with what one.
Well, yeah. I too remember the advertising for La Femme Nikita a lot on TV.
They
I
also
never watched it.
remade La Femme Nikita as a movie called Point of No Return, I think, with Bridget Fonda. Surprisingly much better than you'd think.
Isn't it like Alias? Is that way off base?
A little bit. Well, but it is like sort of a secret assassin
Yeah.
that was a criminal
But
and
less
whatever.
wigs?
Yes, but the one that
Right.
Luc Besson,
Nice.
the one that he
Eric
directed.
Serra.
was-
Serra.
You're getting better.
I can't roll my R's. I'm not going to try.
All right. But the one he directed was French.
Funny thing about La Femme Nikita, I saw the movie once a long time ago, and all I remember about it is that the cleaner, the professional, Jean Reno, he's in that movie playing the character. They call him the cleaner, but he eventually, like, he was so good in that movie that they were like, let's make a movie about this guy.
And he's played by Harvey Keitel in Point of No Return.
Not as good.
And barely even relevant.
Yeah.
And then he's the same character in Godzilla, right?
I don't think he's the same character.
I think he
in
might be
that.
the same character also in Mission Impossible.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. He's great.
He always plays.
He always-
It's in his
basically
contract.
always
Like,
playing-
I
Yeah.
always play as the cleaner, nothing else.
Well, but like in Godzilla, he's like a French military guy. And then in Mission Impossible, he's like a French military guy, right?
Yes.
Or is he a bad guy in Mission Impossible?
Various levels. Well, don't spoiler alert. Yeah, he is, but you don't
Damn
find
it.
it out till the end.
What have I done? What have I done?
Yeah, but so this guy made some music, and then worked on a Bond film.
I like his music. I understand why it's hated by at least 1/3 of us.
I think it was a cool choice to bring this guy on, and he
Yeah.
did something radically different and still fitting for the movie. Like it's not so off-putting that you can't watch the movie. Like, it fits, you know. And they ultimately used this music for the video game also, which we'll get into possibly at a later date.
And in 1995, that sounded so cool to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
I
was,
was like, oh,
hip.
they like made it cool. They like took the music and they like made it cool. That was my impression.
I don't know. I feel like it hasn't aged well, but
Yes.
also I just can't get over the end song that plays over the end credits, which is
That song's terrible.
I mean,
though.
that song is really terrible.
We can all agree on that. I think.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know.
What's
Matt,
it called
Matt,
again?
how do you feel about that?
Terrible. Yeah, I didn't know that. Though.
That song's
It was a reject song from
From
the
The
Professional. Yeah. I have something queued up here. What song? Oh, I'll cut this out. It's an ad for Carl's Jr.
I don't know. I think we could leave it in. Maybe we'll get a Carl's Jr.
Yeah.
endorsement.
Wait,
need that money.
Here we go. Okay, we heard this already. I'm just gonna skip around the soundtrack.
I think this section of this podcast could be heavily edited.
Oh yeah, this is
But-
giving me some N64
The
vibes.
sound.
That sound right there. There's like, it's what me and Colin think sounds like a pipe.
Yeah.
Like that's how they achieved the sound effect. They
crack
bang.
pipe?
no, like
No.
a pipe like hitting the ground, but softened somehow.
Yeah.
You just like an old metal pipe, and you just drop it, and it just kind of like sticks.
Okay, this is the theme. We'll get into that. I'm just skipping around. What part is this? I think this is the chase in the beginning
Yeah.
with the car, the Ferrari.
No, that song is bad. Remember?
Yeah. I think this is part of it, though. What the hell? This is so hard to do on your phone. The fingers you are using are too fast. This is it, yeah.
Yeah. This is the car chase with the Ferrari.
Oh yeah.
This is the worst
Yeah.
part. Oh, I only caught the
It
tail
sounds
end of
like a Prince B-side that didn't actually make the album,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely got some Prince vibes
Yeah.
going on.
I'm
and not
just,
in a good way. Normally that's a good thing.
You know,
but-
all the parts I like about it, all the parts I don't like about it. I'm glad that it happened.
Yeah, me too.
You know, like
I can.
it's
sign
out there. We just spent like 15 minutes talking about it.
I can sign.
There's
off
something
on
to
yes.
that.
Yeah, we just. Sorry, we put you guys through that.
But that one noise, I was saying to Matt that I wished that they kept the theme of using that like noise, because they just put it in the score.
Dull pipe noise.
Yeah, at random beats, they'll just be
Right.
like, oh, Bond's walking around, and it's like.
So for the new Bond producers, if you're out there listening,
But
bring
imagine
back
they-
the dull pipe noise.
Imagine they
Is
kept
that too much
that.
to ask?
Imagine they kept that as a theme going forward from 1995 on.
Yeah.
Or even just in the Brosnan ones, and then they
Well,
change
yeah.
it again. Yeah.
Right.
What
I would have liked that.
I remember like watching. I don't remember much about Tomorrow Never Dies, so I'm excited to talk about that one next time. But I do remember watching it and feeling the changes from this movie to that one, and like being conscious of like, oh, this has changed for the worse. I think. Like I remember feeling disappointed in some way, and I think the music has something to do with it.
I think so too. I think it felt like they were dropping some of the themes that they were trying to create.
This music for me,
Whether they actually
Creates-
did that or not, it had that kind of feel. I think.
it creates an atmosphere and it creates like a world, and to take it away suddenly in the next movie like cheapens it or something. It brings it, or maybe it cheapens the next movie is what I'm saying. Like not,
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt this one. I
I
don't
don't
know.
want to get too far ahead of ourselves in terms of the movies, but I think I agree with you in principle that this is the high point of the Brosnan era for me. And yet, I don't think it's the soundtracks that was killing the other movies. I think it's almost everything else.
But there's something they were trying to do with it that did not get picked up, and even this guy had dissent and traction about this even in the production. So the tank chase, they totally cut his whole musical piece that he did for it and replaced it with the old theme because they were like, it's too much. Thank you, but it's too much.
I applaud the ambition. I just don't think it really succeeds.
But even like we were talking
very
about this
frequently.
before we started recording, like we all agree that this movie is fun. It adds some freshness to the series. Like it's like, the last two movies were kind of like putting us to sleep, and then this is like the slap in the face to like, oh yeah, these movies are still cool. They could still be good. For a long time, I think throughout the 80s, the Bond movies like were not that great.
Well, I think
But
I would like,
what
to,
I was
I would
gonna
like to point out that we all enjoyed License to Kill and gave it high ratings.
Yeah, no, I mean we agree them for what I can agree to that we like them for what they are. But this movie, I think, is on another level in terms of
it
quality.
found a bigger audience.
License to Kill was
numbers.
License to Kill was a darker, grittier kind of Bond, and this did bring back the fun, which I think has as much to do with the script, and the approach of the director as anything. But yeah, sure, maybe the experimenting with the soundtrack helped too.
But what I was getting at was that for the Brosnan movies, like, if this one is a slap in the face and like freshness and like high quality, something it tends to go. I think it goes downhill after this one. Like, something is lost that, like you said, this movie is trying to create, and they kind of lose track of that. And I guess we'll get more into that, towards the end.
We should.
I mean, I'm curious to watch the other movies.
We should
'cause
explore
I'm
this
curious
topic
too.
through each of the next few Brosnan ones.
Yeah, let's keep.
we
this
should
in
keep
mind.
on doing a podcast every month
Whoa.
about every subsequent Bond movie.
What a great idea!
We could talk about each one of them in order.
I
Are
do
you down,
not
Colin?
compute.
So we'll get back to the music as we go along, the scenes and stuff. But so we've got the gun barrel. Let's talk about the cold open. I think it's one of the best cold opens that we've seen thus far.
Yeah, I'd say it's top 5 of all the cold opens. It's really good. It gives you a bunch about the story. It's got great action, great beats. Just
It sets up a plot device that is like the crux of the movie. That you now, of course, we see it coming because we've seen this movie so many times. But like upon first viewing it, I don't think you see it coming. And so of course, the twist is that you see 006, Bond's like former partner or like
Ally.
on this
Lover.
mission. Yeah, ally. Yeah, you see him get killed, only to find out later in the movie.
They don't imply that, but they don't not imply that.
I think it's subtextual. I think it's in there.
What was I saying? So you get later on, it's revealed that he's the villain, and it's like a big twist.
Did anybody else notice that General Aramov's hat in this cold open just looks so big?
I couldn't tell if his hat looked bigger or his head looked tiny, but I do agree that there was something weird about the size.
What's
of
going on with
Yeah.
that? It really stands out
I just
to
thought
me.
that was like a Russian thing. Like,
I did
you're-
enjoy
Is
his.
it?
I did enjoy his face, and I was like, "Why wasn't this actor in more things? He's got a great face."
Yeah, that guy's good.
Yeah.
This is
Random
one of
good
the this is one of the successes of what this movie was trying to do, is like bring a little more to all the side characters and like give them a little depth without because I feel like they didn't handle that well last movie. That's what we talked about.
We did have like a million side characters.
Yeah,
in
they
that movie.
did too many side characters with too much to them.
Yeah,
This guy, you don't see him too much, but you want to see him more because you think he's Ormov.
specifically about villains.
Side
villains?
characters.
I think everyone.
No, side
all
characters.
Side
Yeah,
characters.
all side
everyone who
Okay.
isn't Bond. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone who isn't Bond.
I like.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and this guy's pretty good. I especially like how he is progressively as the plan seems to be falling apart in his world. He starts drinking and looking disheveled.
yeah. He's like this. He's like this uptight,
great.
straight-laced general that
Yeah.
that MI6 doesn't even think is capable of treason because he's such a straight shooter.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, he's like just pounding from this flask. and
His shirt's like half untucked. He's like sweating, but not all over, just sweating in patches.
I mean, that's like a sort of a story they tell visually, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
And it culminates with him being killed by Trevelyan. Like he
Basically set
just
up
had
to die.
enough.
Yeah.
of him. He's like,
Yep.
fuck you.
No, Bond
Yeah.
kills him.
But
Does he?
Well, he
I
gets.
thought Trevelyan kills him.
No, he gets set up to be killed by. So Trevelyan can
Trevelyan
escape.
runs away
Trevelyan basically sets it up so
Yeah.
that Bond will kill him while Trevelyan runs away.
because Aramov has the gun on the girl, and
Yeah.
then Trevelyan runs away, and Bond has to kill Aramov because
Well,
the girl will
first
die.
he gives him the nod. He gives Ormov the nod where he's like,
Yeah.
"Go ahead and kill her," and then he's like, "I'm out of here."
Right, yeah, because he knows Bond is going to stop the girl from dying.
Bond shoots him in the face, and he turns around, and there's just a big cloud of smoke in the shape of Trevelyan.
Yeah.
yeah. Little cartoon noises.
Is it? Diddle, diddle,
yeah.
But back to the cold open. One of my favorite things about it, Bungie,
Yeah.
totally 90s, very very in the moment.
I did watching it on a modern
Very
TV. I
extreme.
could tell that it wasn't Pierce though.
Yeah, they have a stuntman doing it. We don't really see his face. They do the little thing. They don't play it up as much as they did in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah.
But they do a little thing where you see the feet running across the edge of this giant dam, and you see the guy who, dark hair, obviously handsome, well-built guy in this all-black outfit who gets up there to get
Calm
ready to
down,
bungee jump.
Obviously handsome.
Extremely handsome.
You can only see the back of his head, but he's got like a really handsome back of his head. Like you can see some jawline there, and it's like, I don't know, maybe he's missing a nose. Are you guys that big on noses? Who knows? I feel like
Harris is all
don't be
about
so superficial.
Built men from the back.
Stop reading my Bumble profile. But we don't see his face, and he does this whole bungee jump stunt where he bungee jumps off the dam and then breaks into this facility, and then finally we see his face when he is in a bathroom stall hanging upside down,
Right.
and a guy's reading the paper on the toilet, and he pulls the paper down, and it's just big old Pierce Brosnan face there upside down, sort of like the Spider-Man kiss in that
I
Sam
forgot
Raimi
to
movie.
knock.
And
It's
then
pretty
he's-
good
yeah.
one-liners.
and then he punches him in the
All over, yeah.
punches him in the
I
nose.
thought his one-liner there could have been more bathroom themed.
Can you give a suggestion?
The guy's got the newspaper and he pulls it down and he looks at Bond and Bond looks at him back and he just goes, "Courtesy flush."
Yeah. Or light a match.
Light a match and he lights him on fire.
That would be good.
Light a
But that's not stealth. He would have run screaming out of the stall on fire.
Would have been worth it. But yeah, that's
bathroom.
it is a solid cold open.
Yeah, so then just to quickly run through it, we meet Alec Trevelyan, 006. They set a bunch of bombs all around. Their plan is to just destroy the place, right? It's like a chemical plant.
Yeah, that appears to be the plan.
It's a chemical plant that is the geography did confuse me because I was like, okay, what does this dam have to do with this chemical plant? Which when we see the chemical plant later and Bond escapes from it, it's on a cliffside on this high plain runway.
So at the bottom of the dam is a secret tunnel, and the tunnel goes
Oh,
to
so we
the
missed
facility.
we missed some of the travel there. Also, I feel like after he walks out of the bathroom, there's a shot of a butcher
There's like a
hauling
cafeteria.
slabs of meat. No, it's a butcher. It's a guy with an apron and a cleaver and blood all over him, hauling giant racks of ribs. And I'm like, wait, do
It's
they have
Russia.
it's a big facility.
They do
like-
things backwards.
Is it like a
man.
mall?
Basically, you just
It's a dam
you
slash
try
mall.
to build as big of a building
Slash
or
chemical
network
weapons
of buildings
facility.
as you can, and
How
you
do
just
you
put
know
everything in
that
there.
there's a tunnel? How do you know the geography? What information led you to believe
Oh,
this?
well, I mean, as we all know, underneath the Hoover Dam here in the United States is where the Transformers are kept.
Right.
Was that on the dam tour?
Yes, it was. It was on the damn tour.
We're gonna get some damn bait. So they're blowing up the chemical weapons facility.
Yeah, so they're setting the bombs, and then suddenly Alec Trevelyan is apprehended by Ormov, and he's held at gunpoint on his knees, and Bond is told to come out, by the count of 3 or 10 or whatever, and he doesn't, and Trevelyan screams to him, like, "Don't do it, Bond," or whatever. Boom, he gets shot in the head. Off screen. We don't see the shot actually happen. We just hear it. So then Bond changes the time on the bombs from 6 minutes to 3 minutes.
They make it look like he gets shot in the head, though.
Yeah, they do.
It's
He
like a
crumples
blank
into
or something.
Yeah, he crumples into a ball immediately, and
And the shot's really fired at his head because there's a bunch of military guys standing around.
So they
who
have to make it look.
are convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then Bond, in one of my favorite sequences, he escapes by hiding behind artillery, or like, what is
a
it?
bunch of flammable kegs of some
Yeah, it's
kind
just
of
like kegs,
explosive
basically. Kegs of
chemicals,
chemicals,
whatever. Yeah. And he it's on wheels, and he slowly
Very
squeaks
slowly.
it from one side of the room to the other, and they're all silently watching with their guns pointed at him.
And
like
Ormov's
30
like,
of
hold your fire.
Hold your fire, yeah. And one of the guards, you see he's like sweating and shaking, and he's like, and he just shoots, and ping, 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 like the bullets fly around.
Yeah.
And then Ormov, like pissed off, turns around and just blows that guy away, just
Right.
shoots him for disobeying, right?
Yeah.
So then Bond hits a button and jumps on a conveyor belt and is
goes outside.
whisked away to outside. And,
And also opens fire on a big cage that dumps all the other flammable kegs onto the soldiers.
yeah, even though they're shooting rounds at him with machine guns, and
They're
he's
very bad.
laying
They're like
on his back
stormtrooper
on a
bad
conveyor belt.
shots.
He's moving quickly.
He is.
The conveyor belt may not be moving quickly, but there's a deception there. Conveyor belt speed doesn't read to the human eye as a normal kind of a speed, and it throws off the barrel of the gun.
I always have that problem with people movers at the airport. I'm always, I'm just.
Yeah, you can't look at them because they're moving at a weird pace, right?
It's too strange. Too strange.
Yeah, you guys.
It's
have
not
sold me
natural.
on this. So Bond is whisked. I can't say that word. Whisked away to the outside, where he looks around and he sees an airplane on the runway in front of him, and he needs to run to it. So, what's faster than running? Motorcycle. Yeah. He sees a motorcycle. He throws the guy off of it.
No, wait. This is an important point because this is something that bugged me about this. He actually gets on the plane.
Oh, yeah.
Punches the pilot in the face, and then in the process of throwing the pilot out of the plane, he falls out of the plane himself. Meanwhile, there's some motorcycle guys that are chasing them, and the pilot falls right in the path of one of the motorcycles, which hits the pilot and bounces backwards. And then James Bond runs backwards down the runway, grabs that motorcycle, and then chases the plane again. And now he's very far behind this speeding plane, but he manages to almost catch up with it on the motorcycle.
Right, but he doesn't, and the plane flies off the cliff unmanned.
Because the runway is on the edge of a cliff.
Yes.
Well, it's on the side of a mountain.
Yes.
Because it's a secret chemical plant.
Of course.
Yeah.
As one has. Yes.
So Bond flies off the cliff on the motorcycle, jumps off the motorcycle, and somehow catches up to the airplane.
Falls faster than a, 2-ton
whatever,
airplane. Yeah, whatever it is.
Well, he did a pencil, but like a face first one, and he made himself little.
Which makes you go faster.
Which cuts down your air resistance.
And he would have been behind the plane, and because it's a real stunt, and the guy almost did it in real life,
but he couldn't, because I think I read that it is impossible. Right?
Yes, because a plane both weighs more and is actually built to be more aerodynamic than people's heads and faces.
Yes.
So you basically, if you're racing a plane in a free fall, you have no advantage at all.
Right. But it looked great.
It did look cool.
It does look great.
It looks really
he catches up to it, he mans it, and he pulls it up, and it flies away.
Just barely.
And as he flies away, they show in great miniature the chemical plant exploding.
Yeah. Or chemical weapons facility.
Chemical weapons.
These were the bad guys.
Yes.
Don't get it wrong.
So here's my one beef with the miniatures is that during that explosion, you see the plane fly overhead, and all the hundreds of bad guys that were just outside shooting at him are suddenly all gone.
Yep.
I hate that. I feel like if that was today, they would CGI little guys in there being blown up.
They definitely would. Maybe they'll go back and do that.
They should,
like
George Lucas style.
Yeah.
I also thought some of the green screen on the dive out there, like the practical stuff, obviously always looks good. But I thought some of the green screen felt a little bit, it's dated. This movie is very old, so
it would look better if done today.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. It wasn't seamless, but and I was surprised because I don't remember that, but I did see that a lot in some of the green screen. Some of the green screen stuff here is totally imperceptible and looks great. Some of it doesn't age as well.
That stuff in the end, this stuff.
The stuff in the end was great. But yeah, I agree 100%. Like this, good stunts, good spy shit, bonus points for being related to the plot, maybe minus a couple of points for the dated VFX, but in general, one of the best cold opens ever.
I just found that
I thought the
giant hat
score for this
distracting.
whole scene was really cool.
Yeah.
Gets you in the mood. Bum, ba, ba, dum, bum, like that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into bum 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 bum, the whole the song, the Tina Turner song.
Oh yeah.
Bum 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 bum.
I love Tina Turner, and this song has a kind of classic Goldfinger appeal to it. Like they clearly had that in mind a little bit. But I was not too into it. I've heard this song several times now, and is there even a chorus to this? It just seems like it's just. It just seems like it's a verse and another verse and another. I was not very.
I don't think the song is that great. I do like the titles, the titles, the sequence.
Oh yeah,
general?
we have Daniel Kleinman taking over from Maurice Binder. This is the.
I feel like you can see that he had better technology at his disposal. And I think his use of the various Soviet, stuff is interesting looking.
Yeah, Maurice Binder had done almost every title up until this point, with a couple of exceptions. And now Daniel Kleinman takes over and does all but one of them from this movie to the present day. And definitely had that fall of the Soviet Union theme was really good. A lot of the green screen stuff you could probably do in 20 minutes in After Effects now, but at the time it was very well done. And I thought the imagery was cool. And some of the ways that he used like color in very creative ways and some of the transitions, you could tell that like it was sort of breathing new life into some of the same ideas that Binder always worked with. It was taking a familiar idea of like half-naked ladies, abstract imagery, and like this relevant
Colors and
iconography,
shadows.
and executing it really well. I loved like the statues of Stalin, or not Stalin, Lenin. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Way less nip in this one, though.
Yes,
I knew you would notice.
I feel like they got away with so much, and then
I think those days are over.
They just scaled back. Yeah.
I think they can't get away with quite
What
as
if
much.
they had like the sickles and they were like
Wow.
Colin was just pointing at his own nipples. So we all got that.
Never mind.
I'm sorry for the folks.
Colin,
at home.
I see a future profession for you. You should give the Broccolis a call.
Never mind. I don't know.
Alex, we're sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot you were here.
Having a girl in the room does not change our disgusting dynamic.
I mean, I think the hammer and sickle thing crosses all gender lines. Hammer and sickle nipples.
Yeah.
Like hammer and sickle nipple rings.
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah.
I just
And
like when you say sickle
maybe
nipple.
tassels as well.
Sickle nipples.
Yeah. Basically, that's what. That's
A
where I
hammer
was
nipple
going.
and a sickle nipple.
Sickle nipple.
Sickle nipple.
That sounds like a band.
I will say
Sickle
about
nipple.
this song, like, for all accounts, like, it is a good song. It's catchy, and it, like...
Is it catchy, though?
It sets the mood.
Does it, though?
I owned this soundtrack when I was a kid, and I just played this song and nothing else on the soundtrack.
Did you?
Yeah. I liked it.
Okay.
But
Well,
I
guess
think...
maybe it grows on you if you own the soundtrack and play it all the time.
I think it's a
Just
good
song.
movie song. Like, you know how some of them transcend the movie and they are, like, a Billboard hit? This one...
Definitely not this one.
No, but I feel like it is a good song for this movie.
Yeah.
Or it feels like a
linked
movie
with
song.
the idea of watching it as a movie.
Yeah,
it's
it,
I think it was very nice of Bono to have enough forethought not to write a good enough song that might overshadow the movie. That was a nice job by him. I think we're going to give him some bonus points for
I mean, I don't. It's
for contributing this mediocrity.
I'm in between here. I think it's neutral. You know, Harris obviously thinks it's bad.
I mean,
Matt obviously
no,
thinks it's good.
I'm fine with neutral.
I think it's like okay.
I think we should aspire to better than neutral, but
No, but then you don't want to overshadow the movie itself.
I think it's the perfect song for this movie. It like perfectly.
I don't think it's good enough. This movie's
Sets it
excellent.
up.
Look,
and
it's
this song
not
should
it's
be
not
better.
Tina Turner as James Bond in GoldenEye. It's
I'd watch that.
yeah, I know that's why I said it.
Now you got that in my head, and I'm like, yeah, that'd actually be a better movie. How could you
Sounds
improve
fascinating.
You guys know who the original band that was supposed to do this song was, right?
Ace of Base.
Ace of Base. Have you heard their song, The Juvenile?
I did. I listened to it, and whatever YouTube video I had, they replaced Juvenile with GoldenEye
Was it?
Oh, really?
in the audio. Yeah,
That's cool.
and they put it over the titles, over the
The song was called The GoldenEye, and they made the song and it was rejected, and so what they did was they changed the lyrics and they called it The Juvenile. It's the same amount of syllables. So instead of saying The GoldenEye, they would say The Juvenile,
How do they
which is
spell juvenile? Isn't the lead singer of that band a Nazi?
what?
What?
I'm pretty sure he's a Nazi.
Ace of Base?
Yeah.
He?
Aren't they from
Yeah.
Sweden?
Yeah.
Isn't it a female?
Well, the woman sings the lead parts, but there's a guy who's like the main songwriter behind him. Pretty sure he's Nazi. I don't know.
What
That's a
evidence
bold
do you have?
statement.
I think I read it somewhere.
Oh.
Hearsay. Nice. Okay.
We'll fact check that.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you guys know later on if the guy's a Nazi or not.
Ace of
But anyway,
liked
yeah.
Ace of Base's music until I
the
found out it
Juvenile.
was associated with Nazism.
Yeah. You definitely want to stay away from that.
I guess we didn't see the signs.
I've been trying for like 3 minutes to think of a good way to work that in, but it really did. That was perfect. You
just gotta let it happen
Yeah,
organically.
nicely done.
You got to really open up your mind.
Yeah. It's,
you wanna do
it's a
the-
pretty good song.
Do you want to do the plot summary?
Oh man, I'm not ready, but I guess I will.
I mean, you got to be ready sometime.
There was something I thought I was gonna say about Ace of Base and the song. Oh, the Juvenile. Yeah, Juvenile's also a rapper. Do you think they're associated in any way?
What did you know? Did you sing Back That Thing Up?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good song. That's all I got to say about that. I approve.
I'm waiting on the music cue.
All right, ready? Here we go with the plot summary, and go.
All right, so after the cold open, we see James Bond driving down the road in the DB5, his trademark vehicle, and a Ferrari comes up next to him, and he's got a woman in the car, and she's supposed to be evaluating him. Then they race the Ferrari, and it's a hot woman in a Ferrari, and they're, racing and giving each other eyes and stuff like that. So then he goes to a casino, and they play baccarat against each other, him and the woman from the Ferrari. It turns out she's an agent of a criminal organization called Janus, and Bond is spying on her and finds out that she's shacking up with this admiral on a boat. Her plan was to kill him. She kills him using her thighs during a sex, and and then they steal a helicopter, her and someone. Then we see a place called Severnaya, and it's where they have the GoldenEye, and then Ourumov comes in and steals the GoldenEye with the hot woman. And then James Bond finds out about that because they got satellite images. So he knows that he's got to get on the case. He goes, he tracks her down. He knows he's looking for Janice. He finds a guy to help him in St. Petersburg, a Russian guy. And then he realizes it's Trevelyan from the beginning. He's alive. He's the bad guy. Then he, makes friends with the woman who survived the explosion in the Severnaya, and they, fall in love and do chases and stuff. And then he has to go confront Trevelyan at the secret base in Cuba, which they track down after they track him down on a train, and he almost bombs them to death. And they go to the place in Cuba, and there's a big satellite dish hidden under a lake, and they got to go in there, and they have a big confrontation, and stuff happens, and then a bunch of stuff blows up, and then they have a fist fight, and then he wins. James Bond beats Trevelyan for England.
No,
and the
me.
world, and for himself.
I'm glad that she killed a guy during a sex.
She kills him during a sex. That was good.
Yes, that's how you say that properly.
I'm sad that throughout that whole thing you didn't once say, "I'm invincible."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you didn't mention Boris at all.
Well, I brushed by the CIA guy, and I barely mentioned Zukovsky.
Who's Zukovsky?
Valentin Zukovsky.
Oh yeah, right.
Former
You barely mentioned Natalia Semenova, who is like the main female lead.
But I did talk about her.
You got her in there, snuck her in there. We could talk about how after the almost celibate Timothy Dalton era, we have Bond back to his old tricks, immediately boning the MI6 evaluator who gets sent down to evaluate him.
He comes on real strong in that
his
scene.
Comically insatiable libido was sorely missed in the Dalton films. It's nice to have the walking erection back.
Welcome back.
It's clearly the only way he had to connect with that woman in any way. She was not pleased.
No, she was very mad about everything.
It was the only way to save the situation,
Right. So then he goes, after that whole business, he goes back to MI6 headquarters, and we meet a bunch of new familiar characters, but
old characters, new actors.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Moneypenny.
Yeah, Moneypenny. Why don't you talk at length about
beautiful evening gown, dressed to go to the theater.
Ah, the theater.
And they have a bit of a conversation about how she was out going to the theater, but Bond wishes that she was just dressing up for him, but she's not. But he, is. Yeah. Then she's like, you got to stop. You're going to sexually harass me. And then he's like, oh, what'll happen then? She's like, you got to make good. I don't know.
What are you saying?
I'm losing track of
It's a really good scene. It is actually because it has sort of the usual flirtatiousness that you get with Bond and Moneypenny. But for once, they actually give her a lot more of the power, where she's sassing him back a lot and sort of giving as good as she gets. And I think that's sort of an interesting development in this, is that there's probably a lot of stuff that's still going to be a little I don't know, objectionable or questionable in a lot of the male-female relationships in these movies. But it feels like we're in a different place now, where at least the writers went out of their way to give all the women in this, all the female characters in this movie, their own point of view and sort of their own autonomy. And Moneypenny is a great example of that. And the other great example of that is M.
Which is why our political analysts rule him out. He doesn't fit the profile of a traitor.
Are these the same analysts who said the GoldenEye couldn't exist? Who said the helicopter posed no immediate threat and wasn't worth following?
You don't like me, Bond. You don't like my methods. You think I'm an accountant. A bean counter, more interested in my numbers than your instincts.
The thought had occurred to me.
Good. Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War. Whose boyish charms, though wasted on me, obviously appeal to that young woman I sent out to evaluate you.
Point taken.
Not quite, 007. If you think for one moment I don't have the balls to send a man out to die, your instincts are dead wrong. I've no compunction about sending you to your death. But I won't do it on a whim, even with your cavalier attitude towards life. I want you to find GoldenEye. Find who took it, what they plan to do with it, and stop it. And if you should come across Ourumov, guilty or not, I don't want you running off on some kind of vendetta. Avenging Alec Trevelyan will not bring him back.
You didn't get him killed.
Neither did you. Don't make it personal.
Tight.
It's a really good scene.
Yeah, right there. It could have been something more along the lines of, well, I'm not just an accountant, I know what I'm talking about, and you do this. But instead, she's like, you think this, I think this. Let's talk, it's much more personal. It's much more driven by the character, what the dialogue is, than it is.
She puts him in his place a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, she finds the right balance of tough and protective, which we've seen in previous movies is actually kind of difficult for that M character to do. Sometimes they got it right a lot more often in the early movies with Connery. But in the early movies, Robert Brown, who's the name?
I think his name is Robert Brown. Yeah.
In the early movies, it was the weird comical thing of like Bond knows more than M somehow.
Right.
I feel like was going on
Right.
in the way they
there was this weird sort of paternal,
Which they kind of like put the spin on here that like she's like, save
right.
it.
There was always this aspect of the guy could trust Bond completely because Bond was so far ahead of everyone else that he knew he could always count on Bond to come through, even if he had to like play the bad cop or the angry dad sometimes.
Yeah.
This is a totally different dynamic where it's really she's just as capable as he is, and she's not putting up with his shit, but at the same time, she is on his side.
Yeah, and I think you still get the fact that she respects the fact that he's the one out there with his life on the line.
Right. Yeah.
Which is it's a testament to the actor as much as it is the writing as well.
Right.
Which the script in this is really good, but it's the actor too.
It's a tricky character, and this is like you said, the script does a great job, but also the actors playing those parts really bring it here. And I don't think there's much competition here, but Judi Dench is absolutely far and away the best M that we've seen so far and probably will for a while.
They first entertained the idea of the Lady M when Lois Maxwell, the former Moneypenny, asked to get promoted to get to do that.
Which was a good idea. They were like, hey, right shot, wrong player.
Yeah. Which is sad, but
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah,
Bittersweet.
I think that would have been cool.
It would have been cool.
Yeah, if suddenly like he comes into the office and he's like, "Where's Em?" and she's like, "You're looking at her," or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about the new Moneypenny. We talked about M.
Talk about the sets a little bit. We're sort of back to. I feel like we haven't had these great grandiose. We've had some exotic locales in the past few movies, but it's been a while since we had really remarkable sets. And I feel like so much of this, the chemical plant, the casino, even stuff like the casino where we're only in it for a few shots, that is a pretty big, elaborate, nice-looking set.
I thought that was a real place. I didn't think
might
it was
be.
a set.
I'm sure it is.
But they found a great location either way. The satellite station, the Kremlin, the stuff inside the Soviet building is all great.
I think the
Soviet statue junkyard is amazing.
Yeah, that's real good. So good that it makes maybe the best visual level in the video game when
Absolutely.
it translates to like digital artists trying to recreate it.
Yeah.
I think the best set is the fact that they rebuilt several streets of St. Petersburg on a backlot that they acquired from an old aircraft factory just so they could run a tank through it and destroy it all.
Yeah, that tank sequence is one of the cooler parts of the movie.
But I mean, like rebuilding a part of an existing city, that's an amazing set.
But it's because they couldn't get permission
To destroy St. Petersburg?
Not
Those Russians.
They just don't appreciate art over here.
it wasn't the permission, like they would have done it, safely or whatever, but it was that they feared accidentally like destroying something.
a famous landmark
Yeah.
and then being stuck in Russia with a bunch
Starting
of
World War
Russians.
III.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is one of my specific memories from seeing this in the theaters when it came out, and this is like probably the first Bond movie that I remember.
The tank scene?
Because I do remember the whole Timothy Dalton getting cast and that whole thing, so I was aware of the movies, but this is I think the first one that I saw when it premiered in the theater. I was there, and I remember it actually happened a little earlier when they're running through the archives and you start getting the first hints of the James Bond theme, which they showed a lot of restraint in not really overusing it at all earlier in the movie. So you're like more than halfway through the movie, and then they're running through those archives on those graded metal things, and you just get like a hint of the theme, and it literally sent a chill up my spine. But when he busts through the wall in the tank, basically Urmov's escaping with Natalia, and he's chasing them, but we don't know how he's going to chase them. He knows that they're leaving in a car, and he doesn't know how he's going to get to them. And then we just see the car driving down the street, and all of a sudden the wall breaks down.
Yeah.
And James Bond driving a tank, like he's out of the tank, like his hair's like blowing in the wind, and he's steering this tank down the street, like through walls and shit. That was one of the most iconic moments in this movie, and maybe any Bond movie.
To me, this is a huge moment for me. Maybe even bigger than what you're describing. So, like for me, when I was young, at this point, my parents had already like separated at least once, and from what I remember, there's like a little bit of like what should your kids see or whatever, right? So from what I remember, it was like my dad was like he should like James Bond, and my mom was probably like it's probably too old for him, it's too adult or whatever, and I remember being in that moment, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like it or not. Like, I'm still like learning about like what I like and stuff. I'm young, right? And I remember like being in the theater and like watching it and like digging the movie enough so far and like not thinking very much about how adult it was, except for the sex scene that happens earlier. And I'm like, well, this is not pornos. I know they have a different theater for that, and like whatever. But then when it's like, okay, it's another chase, this is like cool, and there's gonna be action or whatever, and then he just busts through the wall in a tank, and he's like and the theme comes in, and,
Yeah.
and it's just like I was just like it was like an epiphany for me. I was like, oh, I like this. I see why this is entertaining and good, and I like this.
Tanks
Like,
chasing cars.
I'm having a
with this music
realization
in the
right now.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
it's all coming together.
well, I think there was some question for me. It's like, okay, like, but so these movies are serious, but they're funny, or what? He like kills people, but he's joking around, and like he's a spy. Don't
then you see
spies
the
in
tank
real life?
thing and you're like-
don't spies in real life just do stuff with like files?
And then you see that tank scene and you're like, and none of it matters.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
Was this all of our first theatrical Bond experience?
Yeah, I think
Probably,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater, or more so, I remember seeing the trailer for this movie. I don't remember what movie I was seeing, but it came up, and I remember the trailer being really cool. And then, I can't remember if it's the beginning of the trailer or the end, but it says, like, coming this, like, November or Christmas season or whatever. And I just remember it's either the font that they use or like there's lights around it, but they're like Christmas lights. And then it like changes and it becomes like James Bond. Yeah. I remember that. And I remember watching the trailer and thinking like, oh, what is this James Bond? I must investigate this further. And then I went to see it in the theater and I remember really digging it. And then of course, when I was a kid, if I found out that a movie I liked had sequels, I had to see all of them because I needed to know the full story. How could I not see Friday the 13th Part 7 and 8, without understanding that character? So, of course, finding out that there were like 22 other movies at the time, I think, or 20 or
Of
something.
wildly varying quality.
Yeah. I had to see them all.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And I'm sure this informed both of your conceptions of what consensual sexual intercourse between sane adults looks like, because
We've all been fired from many a job.
that is the weirdest sex scene. The one with Anatop
one where
and
she kills the
yeah,
admiral.
yeah. That is, at no point do they do anything even remotely resembling sex, except that her legs are around him at some point. But like everything else, it's like, I didn't know if it was for ratings purposes or what. She's like sort of pawing at him with her hands, and she's rubbing his bald head, and he's just making like cooing sounds.
I feel like their direction to the guy was like, we don't want you to move very much, but you got to act like you're really enjoying it until you act like you're about to fucking die.
Yeah.
Like
And
that's what it seemed like the direction was.
Their direction for her was, well, you know what sex is like, and she's like, I guess.
I feel like their direction to her was like, just like, don't hold anything back.
Yeah. Nothing you
Like,
can do can be too embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly.
To not make this scene
Yeah,
work.
exactly.
Just act like a cat, or like pretend you're some kind of ferret. That's
There's
loose
nothing
in
you can
somebody's
do that
pants.
will make us say cut.
Right, exactly. It is pretty ridiculous.
I do like that they kind of set her up in a previous movie. They remember which
Yeah.
one was it, Living Daylights or
Yeah.
something, where they're going through like the potential agents he could encounter, and one of them is a woman who crushes people.
Do you
with
think
their
they were
thighs.
like researching to write this script? They were like watching the old movies, and they're like, oh, you know what? We
I
should use
definitely
that.
think
Yeah,
that. I think it
makes
was
sense.
very much that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really get a. It's funny. Famke Janssen is, of course, what was she? Dutch.
She's
Yeah,
Dutch model turned actress.
Yeah.
And this was her first big break. She'd literally done almost nothing before this, and it led to pretty steady work. And she didn't break out until like 5 years later in the X-Men movies. And I thought she was very good in this, but I never got like the sexy, flirty vibe from her that you do with some of the bad girls in these movies. Like,
I was very attracted to everything she was doing and a little confused by it, but I'm okay with it now.
but that was the thing. It was like there was like some sincere malice behind all of her flirtations. Like
Yeah.
you got.
I mean, I got that she was evil, but I don't know.
I
it seemed
never
like-
got as a kid that when she is killing people and making audible sounds that she's supposed to be orgasming when she's
Right.
doing that. That's her like Bond villain niche like thing that she does until later as an adult when I revisited this movie and I'm like, she's orgasming.
Well, that's what I think is so weird about it. Is like you can tell that the seduction part doesn't really. It's something she's got to do her job, but it's not the real interest.
Right.
Like she's only interested in the murder part of it. That's where she gets off.
Right.
Everything else is just like she gives Bond a lot of attitude when she's just
Right.
like, all right, I'm not going to kill you. Like I've got to flirt with you now, but it's really kind of a pain in the ass. Can I just get to the point where I murder you?
I feel like I got what was going on, but I was just like, but you know, if she was just a little more of a real world character, it would just be like a weird chick, you know, like she's just like a little bit into like pain or like weird shit or something, you know, like because I mean, usually you go to jail for like mowing people down with a machine gun.
Yeah.
And she found a way to make it work as a career woman.
So like if you try to make it a more real world character, it's not going to be orgasming by shooting people. It might be orgasming from something that is questionable, but
she's right in that Zorin zone, that Max Zorin zone.
Yeah.
Of maybe a little too over the top, but I think they stay on the right side of the line in this one.
I was just like maybe some people are weird and like this woman is evil and she's both.
Right.
I do like
That was my
her arc comes full circle when she is killed by being like essentially crushed,
Yeah.
or like suffocated.
Two tree branches.
Bond shoots down the helicopter that she is repelling from, and it falls down in such a way that she is pulled into like what's like a tree between two tree branches.
Yoke? Do they call it a yoke?
A
The
yoke?
of
Yeah.
the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's squeezed. However, I think it would have been cool if, like, after she died, they cut to her and she has a smile on her face.
Like
Or-
the
Uh-huh.
general
Yeah.
when he falls out of
Yeah.
the closet has a big smile on his face.
I
Right.
also
Killed.
maybe this is wrong, but I also feel like they should have done a special effect where it's like it's very clear she did not survive that. Where it's like maybe they put like the bottom part of her in the tree, and then they made a dummy bottom half of her so it would look like she was
just a
more
close up of her face.
So it would look like she was more
on either
dead.
side of her ears.
Well, not that, but almost that.
Yeah, so you're saying her death like didn't look believable. It just looked like she was like
It looks
hanging
like
there.
yeah, it kind of looked like she was chilling.
It was in theory it was the most gruesome death in the movie, but in practice it was soft ass like everything else in this movie.
Damn.
I mean, this is my
Ooh,
and it's
shots
not
fired.
well, no, it's not a criticism of the movie, but I do think it's interesting that this is like we have. The body count once again has gone up. I think it's risen pretty consistently throughout the series. We've gotten a higher body count almost every movie, and it's very high here. Basically, half the sequences end with a machine gun fight, but I don't think they use any squibs in any of them. There's like no blood. There's very little. It's all very sanitized, and I think it's kind of interesting how we've had these like wild fluctuations of violence in the last few films. Like we've gone from Roger Moore and Clownface to Felix getting his leg eaten off to this movie, where it's just very kind of the idea of violence is there, but the results are kind of candy ass. So
I think culturally in movies in the 80s, like by the end of the decade, movies were getting like incredibly violent and like gory, like bloody violent, like to the like. If you remember, like the late 80s, early 90s were all about like being extreme. Like everything was extreme. And like the action movies, like think of the Stallone movies like Cliffhanger and RoboCop and like, all movies like that. Total Recall is like super violent.
Yep.
And like everything was just reaching a peak. I remember as a kid watching movies and thinking like, how can it get worse than this? How can it get even more like violent? I'm like so excited for this. But then like, I think as a society, we reached like a peak where it just became excessive.
Well, and I think that's a good point because we've often talked about the Bond films as less they don't set these standards. They're more like a bellwether of what's going on other places.
A litmus test.
Yeah, right, exactly. So they're sort of representative of what's going on in society. And it's sort of to your point, that's all a result of what happened in the 70s when you had like, you had the sort of the Hays Code and all the studio stuff that had put a lot of censorship on things was gone. You had Sam Peckinpah and Arthur Penn doing these hyper-violent movies. You had horror movies coming out with blood everywhere. You had the Vietnam War beaming blood and death into the living rooms every night. And all of a sudden in the 80s, it was like people had been unleashed to, we can do R-rated movies and just show all the shit, just all the gore we want. Hey, we don't even have to make it look like red paint anymore. We can actually have like, they got good at making realistic gory effects. And then at some point somebody was like, hey, just because we can doesn't mean we always should. And it kind of opened it up to, hey, we can have a wider audience if we kind of...
And in between there was the one-upsmanship of like, that was really gory. I think we have to make it more gory.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And you don't want to be... You want to be edgy, so if you're going to do a movie that's an action movie, you have to have somebody get shot up and have blood coming out. It was like... And you can... We had this weird break because we did have the previous Bond films had a lot of sort of bloody violence, and then they were gone for 6 years. But I think it's instructive to look at like the franchises that were existing during that time, because like Lethal Weapon had a bunch of bloody gunshots and stuff in the first two movies, and by the fourth one it was exactly like this. It was totally sanitized. It was family friendly action comedy.
Or like Die Hard, and Die Hard 2 got progressively more violent and bloodier, and that was like sort of 1990, 91 or whatever. And then by the time Die Hard with a Vengeance came out, which I think was the same year as this, it had also achieved more of a realism.
Moved in the other direction.
Like I feel like that realism started to become like the popular thing. Like, rather than make it like comically like outlandish or violent, let's bring it down to a more like violence is more gruesome when it's real, because you can imagine what it would be like in real life.
Or even just making it instead of that R rating, because you have a lot of bloody murders, just take out the blood and you can have the same amount of killings and we'll give you a PG-13. It's like how Schwarzenegger went from doing Commando to doing like Eraser or something, where he probably kills a lot of guys in Eraser, but I don't remember a lot of blood in that movie. It's just sort of
just
they
CGI
toned
crocodiles.
Everything. It's just CGI crocodiles.
And then,
they just toned it all
the
down.
balance with language changed too. It was like, okay, well, we won't put as much blood, but we'll say fuck or something.
Right.
Yeah. Also, we could talk about like sex scenes in movies too. In the late 80s, early 90s, like I think every movie for adults had a gratuitous
see
sex
boobs.
scene where you'd see boobs and like a song would play and like they would be having sex like for 2 minutes.
Like
and,
Highlander?
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
yeah. What's the point of making a movie for grown-ups if you can't show boobs
Right.
and sex?
I
You know, and then somebody was like, "Hey, you know, sometimes just sex is not actually advancing the movie at all." And in those cases, like, are people going out here just to see these boobs, or should we just make a good movie and skip the kind of cheesy softcore Skinamax scene that we've been
helps.
throwing in there? Yeah, yeah.
I remember once I was like telling my friend about Highlander the movie, and I was like, yeah, he's like an immortal, and there's like like basically the fantasy elements of Highlander, and he was like, okay, and then he watched it like on a date, and he was like, you shouldn't have told me to watch that movie. It didn't go well. The sex scene was a little bit much, and I was like, oh, I didn't know the circumstances.
You didn't suggest it as a date movie.
No.
At least you didn't suggest Highlander 2.
Which is trash.
At least you weren't like, hey, watch this with your mom. Do you remember accidentally watching a movie with your mom that's got like I remember that like when it was, you know, every once in a while we'd watch a rated R movie and all of a sudden there'd be that random softcore sex scene and it would just be like
Your dad just reaches over and like covers your eyes.
No, we would all sit there in uncomfortable silence and I would try not to breathe or swallow or move at all.
Yeah.
And if I could, I would stop my heart from beating for a little while, just like disappear into the couch.
That's how it's done right there.
and then peek out of the corner of my eye and be like, are they looking at me? But no, we're all looking straight ahead, but not at the TV, just sort of staring vacantly off into the
looking
area.
past the TV.
Just 1,000-yard dead-eyed
Or I hate
stare.
when like you're watching a scene like that with your parents and like it's uncomfortable, but hopefully it's brief. But like sometimes it's not, and it goes on for too long, and you suddenly
You're holding your breath.
you
You
hear the
realize
discomfort of your parents. Like your mom or someone will be like,
It's like somebody wants to make a joke or defuse a situation or leave, but nobody will.
You just take
that's when you know it's bad, when like your mom gets up and like leaves the room. Or,
you
like,
do like a deep sigh because you didn't realize you were holding your breath the whole time. You're like,
Or like the thing where you're not like swallowing normally and then you have to like gulp. Oh God.
Oh,
so where were we on this GoldenEye picture?
are we still talking about this movie? Colin, didn't you have something we were talking about before the show? Like you had something in your notes that you wanted to talk about.
Well, a few things. I did take notes. I do want to go back to Sean Bean and just appreciate what he did here, and just recognize him for being like the greatest at dying on film.
I also so badly want to pronounce his name, Sean Bean.
Or Cinnabon?
Sean Bond.
Or Sean Bond, yeah.
What if he has that joke, like, you know, and if you like are friends with him, he'll let you call him Cinnabon.
Yo, Sean Bond.
Yo, Cinnabon.
Cinnabon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he dies in a lot of
Boromir,
movies.
Ned Stark.
Yep.
He dies 2 times in this one.
He was the IRA bad guy in Patriot Games. He was the bad guy in National Treasure. Does he die in that? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
He actually survives in Ronin because he's a coward. But that's another.
I haven't seen Ronin.
Oh my
Is
God,
that with
Because
Keanu?
he survives.
That's
You
a
don't want
great
to
movie.
see it.
Oh my God, it's such
Is
a
that with
good movie.
Keanu?
No, that's with
De Niro?
De Niro. Yeah.
Isn't Jean Reno?
It's
in
John Frankenheimer and Jean Reno. Oh my God!
Oh,
Yes,
Jean
all coming
Reno.
full circle.
The French army guy from
the
Godzilla.
French army guy from all these movies.
that? Does he play a French army guy in that?
Yeah, he plays a French army guy who's fighting Godzilla in that. It's very weird. It's very out of place.
I am
He's like,
Zaklina.
we have to stop Godzilla. Fetch me another glass of wine. I got to plan this out.
Where is Natalie Portman?
Oh, is she too young? I'm not sure.
I feel strangely
Matilda.
attracted to this 6-year-old.
We must fight Godzilla.
Movies were different back then.
Yeah, movies were different back then. You could get away with a lot. It was France.
Yeah, that was the
Definitely.
excuse.
This
What
is
was
by
the
far
su-
my favorite part of the
What was the name of the song at the end of this movie that was supposed to be in The Professional?
The Something Love.
The Something of Love,
The
yeah.
Something of Love. And they were like, listen, we already got him making sexy eyes at a 6-year-old. We
Yeah.
don't need to end the song with a love ballad.
Feeling of love.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah. But
So yeah, just
And
shout out,
of course, Ned Stark.
shout out to Cinnabon.
The experience of love.
The
Experience of love.
That's
Oh my
wrong.
God, that's even worse. That's so much worse than everything else it could have been.
That's
the
wrong.
Experience of love.
That's wrong.
Oh boy.
So I was theorizing with you two gentlemen before we began to record, and I was saying that maybe it's the personal experience of what age we were, but maybe also the way it was marketed. I feel like there's a shift towards more like imagining yourself as a James Bond character, because this is when we get maybe one of the best video games of its era, and it's just you playing the story of this movie, and the product placement is more pronounced, I would say, in this one, because they had more formal ways of doing it, and the gadgets are more geared towards the product placement being like everyday. This one doesn't have a gadget where it's like only a spy would have this. It has the gadgets where it's like a spy would have this because it looks like a thing a guy would have, like a watch and a car and
a
whatever,
pen.
and a pen and a belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has those kind of gadgets. The watch does more than one thing, and
We get a lot of close-ups of the watch.
we get a lot of close. So it's like kind of like asking you, oh, imagine if you bought this Omega watch, but it's going further than that. It's like, imagine if you bought this Omega watch and it did what this Omega watch does. And then, so to me, this movie, maybe it was because marketing was more sophisticated or something. I feel like this has a shift in tone somehow that asks you to kind of like be more imaginative or role play more in the James Bond world or something like that. But I don't know how to fully flesh out the ideas.
My counterpoint to that is that that's all these movies and before them the books ever were was the fantasy of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you were this really important guy who was capable of handling himself in any situation, seemed to have unlimited resources, women just threw themselves at him and could beat anyone in any fight ever. And it's a fantasy fulfillment. What I think you're getting at, though, is for the first time we had sort of blatant, very unabashed marketing tie-ins to this of, hey, if everyone wants to be this guy, why don't we just sell ad space in our movie since we have all this fancy shit anyways?
Which they already were doing in
Yes,
the 70s.
They were. But now they're sort of doing it unapologetically.
They're better at it.
I mean, at some point, James Bond movies just became BMW commercials. Here, it's like BMW paid $1 million for their stupid Miata-looking car to be in the movie for like 8 minutes and didn't even do anything cool.
Yeah, but they made like 400 times that much profit.
And it worked for them.
Yeah.
It paid off.
They couldn't do anything cool with it. Did you read about that?
Because it was a prototype and they weren't allowed to maybe mess it up. It was an ugly Beamer, though.
Yeah, but it was like a huge seller.
Yeah, no, I mean, it did great. It was the Bond car.
Oh, I liked it. I still like that car. Kind of.
Looks like a Miata.
It does
A little bit like a Miata.
But so are you saying that the marketing became more integrated and more subtle? So like when you say they're better at it, like is that what you mean? Or,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Their technique is, like it's
not
part of the
it's
edit.
not a
It's
car
part of the
flying through a
direction.
billboard. Is that what you're saying? Like,
Yeah, it's not just like this billboard's going to be in there somewhere. It's like when they're in pre-production phase, they know where it's going to be in the edit. They know, they know where it's going to be in the blocking. They know,
I feel like it's almost like they realized they could get away with being more aggressive while still not drawing attention to it. It's like you're showing all this stuff anyways. Just work it into the script, work it into the plot, and make it relevant to the story. And then you can totally whore yourself out.
Which I think other movies were already starting to do those
Right,
techniques,
yes.
and they're like, this is something that we do here.
Yeah, this is something we're kind of doing anyways.
Yeah.
Let's make more money on it.
But besides that with the video game, to me, I don't know. Like, I do understand what you're saying. Like, they've always been the kind of fantasy movies where it's like, it's just asking you to imagine like what this would be like or whatever. But I think there might be a shift of some kind. Either that, or it's just the fact that like this is the first one we saw when we got old enough to like really imagine the concepts that we could grasp or whatever.
I see what you're getting at. I would say let's hold on to this idea and again like revisit it as we go through the Pierce Brosnan era and see if it continues to do this, or if maybe it's just this movie that you feel that because like for the nostalgic reasons. Because I kind of know what you're saying, and I with the video game too, it like opened up the world more and made it more like accessible. Yeah, especially for kids.
More interactive. I don't know.
Because it's kind of like what you said earlier that like before this movie, these movies were for adults.
Yeah.
And this one, by being in a video game, kind of opens it up to a new audience.
Right.
It made kids interested in seeing these movies. I feel like if I was the same age and License to Kill was in theaters and I saw a trailer for it, I might be interested in it, but I might not have been as interested in it as this movie because of the like opening up of the world.
Yeah.
I was probably around the same age when License to Kill came out and was not interested, was not as interested in it and had seen a lot of the movies on TV and was aware of it, but it wasn't like that was, getting me out to the theaters, whereas this was a sort of that also is just the success of this movie. It was a cultural sort of landmark thing, especially after the time off that they had between films.
Yeah, it was the time off plus like a new actor who I think people seem to vibe with. Like they think upon looking at him, oh, he's Bondish.
Well, and Timothy Dalton was very popular, but it was once they realized they were replacing him, I think people liked the fresh face and the,
and the box office on this was better than any before it, except Moonraker.
No, it beat Moonraker.
It beat Moonraker, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the only other... I think we already talked about the script and the screenplay. I just wanted to talk about how it was good. I felt like there were a couple down parts, like when we first see the little interaction between Xenia and the Ferrari and him in the DB5, it's not really answered what he's doing there until later, and you only get one line of dialogue from someone else that says, oh, he's playing a hunch that helicopter will get stolen.
Right.
But you don't, unless you're paying attention, you don't quite get that.
Yeah, I remember feeling like that chase scene in the beginning, I remember thinking like, oh, that's ironic that he just happens to be driving and this girl like happens to drive next to him and she ends up being the villain of the movie. Like, what a coincidence. It's almost like him being at the spa.
Yeah, it kind of happens at a lot of the beginning of these movies.
Yeah.
But he was,
it's not
there is
that,
a line
right.
that says he's playing a hunch to be there. And then, the scenes with him and Natalia, they could be better. I see what they were going for on paper a little bit, but I think they get a little disjointed in the way they play off one another sometimes.
Well, it's another one of those things where it's like one second they're kind of she's resistant, and the next second it's like, oh hey, let's make out.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, there's like they have some flirtation there, but at the same time,
it's just some actresses know how to play that better. That sounds bad.
But there's something to that though, because it is sort of like it's a chemistry thing.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was never that kind of. She did the standoffish kind of stand up for herself stuff really well, and then when they asked her to flip the switch and be like, okay, you just escaped from the train and now you're sitting by the tracks and now just start making out.
I think they gave her some lines to try and like make that transition happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think it came together as much as either the writers would have liked to or the actress would have liked.
Yeah.
Can I play a scene for you guys? Again, it's like a YouTube clip, so I don't know like where the meat of it happens, but I'm just gonna play the whole thing and I'll cut around it.
Sure.
But it's the scene with them on the beach, talking. I have some notes, some qualms with this scene, so I want to see.
This is where I'm going.
He was your friend, Trevelyan. And now he's your enemy and you will kill him. It is that simple.
In a word, yes.
Unless he kills you first.
I tell you.
You think I'm impressed? All of you with your guns, your killing, your death, for what? So you can be a hero? All the heroes I know are dead.
Italian, listen to me.
How can you act like this? How can you be so cold?
It's what keeps me alive.
No. It's what keeps you alone.
How can you act like this?
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's from a different movie.
It's they put time into writing that though. You can tell there's like something they're going for with this conversation, but it's not coming together for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it feels out of place.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing with this character is that it's like they create these conflicts that keep her at arm's length, and then they want them to also have this connection, and it just sort of none of it really makes sense. Honestly, I'm more bothered by her Boys with Toys line, which she says the first time when they don't even have any toys. It's just like two guys.
But then
bickering.
they get the callback later.
Yeah, they get the callback later when it makes sense. But the first time she says it, there's no toys.
It's like maybe written too well, maybe too much on the paper. A
exactly.
Well,
not
I think,
enough in the practical.
Who's the writer who they bring on, like for the future movies? Like they kind of use the same writer.
Bruce
Firestein?
Bruce Firestein does a lot of these.
The big book.
Writes a lot of these.
That's not who I was thinking of,
ones.
but I don't know. I feel like going forward, and I guess we can talk about this more later, but I feel like the future movies all have a scene like this where they try to like have a writerly scene, you know, instead of just action, they have like
well, they have a few.
They try to go deep with Bond, you know.
They have a few moments in here where they do it. They have the one with M, and they have the one with Trevelyan at the end where he does the whole thing where he's like, you know, do all the drinks silence the cries of the men you've killed, do all the women you sleep with.
Well, those scenes work better for me.
They work great. I mean,
Those
like
are better actors.
Some of these writerly scenes do actually work. They are the highlights of this movie, but sometimes they fall in the face, and that is an example. That beach scene is one that definitely does not.
It's also like unfortunate that this movie, for as good as it is, has for me this like lull period in the middle, and it's sort of so like they have the big chase in the archives, and then the tank scene, which is great, but then they get caught, right? And they have the scene where they're in the helicopter, and is it a helicopter, right? They shoot the missiles, and it's set to self-destruct or something.
It's the Tiger helicopter that got stolen.
And they eject out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then they immediately get caught again, and they get put
by
into
the Russians.
They get put into another situation, right, where they don't just kill them; they like leave them.
Dmitry Mishkin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Minister of Defense.
Right.
I feel like these scenes, and then they all
they somehow have a loaded gun on the table during the interrogation, which seems like a bad idea.
It's a bold interrogating technique.
It's Russia.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there are specifically with the love scenes here, like it gets a little.
I didn't really have a problem with the pacing so much as just there's a lot of plot holes that just randomly, you know, like for instance, they never would have found the satellite dish if they hadn't tried to shoot them down with a missile when they're flying over the thing and they can't. Yeah. And Bond's like, I don't know, I think we better give up. I don't think we're going to find it. And all of a sudden a missile comes and shoots them down, and they're forced to.
But that's why it works, I think, because they make a point of it. Like he actually says, like, well, I guess we're not going to find
Screw
it.
Let's
go
home.
back. Yeah.
I mean, I like to think they would have, you know, kept searching in general. But, you know, like, I think they were going to regroup. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then the missile came.
And they were like,
eventually they would have seen the lake
here.
get drained. Am I right?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been too late at that point. I think it was a tactical error on the part of Janice, Janice group.
I think they could have maybe thought that, you know, since Bond by himself couldn't find it, maybe he would have called for
I don't
more
think they knew
people
it was
to come.
Bond in the airplane at that time. I think they were just trying to show
shoot
the
down
airplane.
any random airplane.
Like
They shoot down all
this airplane's
airplanes.
been around too much. Let's get rid of it.
I mean,
we shoot
plan
down with a
is
missile,
about-
and then Xenia comes and squeezes them to death, right?
She's like the leader of their forces.
She's got a machine gun, though. She should probably just use a machine gun sometimes.
But she didn't want to do it that way. She wanted to
squeeze
squeeze
them
him
to death. Yeah, she likes squeezing them.
She likes squeezing them.
Yep.
Bullets is good, but it's not the same.
Not the same as squeezing
It's not the
somebody
same
to death.
climax.
If you've ever done both, you'd know.
As much as I like her death scene, I feel like she was killed a little too early. Like I wanted her to be in the final sequence of the movie.
Although I do like that
they narrow down the villains.
Yeah, and then I thought they had a really good sort of chase and fist fight between Bond and Trevelyan at the end there. Although I'm also questioning what Trevelyan's doing. He's like hunting down Bond to kill him instead of trying to fix the problems that are destroying his whole plan.
I think he gave up on the plan already.
He did, and that's sort of
weird. I think he was like, I'm going to kill Bond, and then we're going to
figure out
GoldenEye 3 or whatever.
Yeah, right. But it is kind of odd that as everything's unraveling, he's just like totally like, well, I'm just going to get into a fist fight with this guy instead of just going up and fixing my thing.
Yeah,
that's going to
but
get
I
me
think
millions.
he's dependent on the computer guy to fix it at that point, who has clearly fucked it all up.
Well, the computer guy did actually technically fix it. It was that Bond jammed the thing into the thing and did, which he's known to do.
I think like revenge and vendetta is a big theme in this movie,
Yes.
and it's a handover from the previous movie too, where you know when what's her name? M says to him,
Don't
like,
go after Yurimov to avenge, Trevelyan.
I guess she's referencing, the events of the previous movie where he goes to avenge Felix Leiter.
Yeah. I did think that fist fight was pretty good. And the thing that stuck out for me the most, which I don't think I ever realized before, is a stuntman does a forward flip down a set of metal stairs that I was like, wow, that looked really fucking dangerous. Like, it's such like a minor thing. They've got guys jumping off of, cliffs and after airplanes and everything. But then they have this one stuntman who jumps down like 20 feet of metal stairs and does like a forward flip on it. And I'm like, holy shit.
Or how about holding on to a ladder that that
descends,
was a good one too.
That falls down and stops him. Yeah.
They always have great stunts, and Brosnan and Sean Bean were doing some of them.
Yeah,
like a good portion of them.
But then they throw in one last like impossible stunt where just try to figure out the logistics of when he jumps off the bottom of that thing onto the helicopter skid. Doesn't that mean that he has to actually jump farther than the distance of the helicopter propellers?
I saw that. Yeah.
I was like, what is he jumping like 25 feet there?
The propeller spinning has to be at least the radius away from the thing he's standing on, yet he can jump onto the bottom.
And they're so convinced that this entire structure is going to collapse that this is their best plan. They can't like have him climb up and escape some other way.
I guess the helicopter pilot was really good, so he could like shimmy it in sideways.
The helicopter pilot's also a bad guy who is apparently,
but he's got a gun to him.
Yeah, he's got a gun to his head. He's going out of his way.
And I think he knows it's all falling apart at this point.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm a good guy now.
He's like, I'm
just kidding, double agent.
I don't think
I call double agent.
Yeah, right, exactly. But the stunts, Famke Janssen broke a rib.
Yep, during
when he slammed her against the wall.
When she was trying to kill him with a sex.
He's trying to get him with the sex. That sauna scene was kind of iconic too. I think that was like in the trailer and a bunch of other things. I didn't realize though those marble walls were actually padded walls. And then when I watched it for like the third time last week,
you could tell.
Knowing that, I was like, oh my god, yeah, they actually are padded walls.
I still didn't see them as padded walls.
It's really well done. You just can tell in the corners like the edging isn't quite even. It's just it's definitely some other things.
But I think we finally reached the point where the fight scenes in these movies are believable. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
It took this long.
Roger Moore.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Sorry.
So some random thoughts for you guys. Every time I see this in a movie, I always think the same thing. Baccarat. What the fuck? Can we play Baccarat sometime?
They're in France. It's a French game.
Can we learn how to play Baccarat? I have no idea what the hell's going on. It's the most bizarre thing. I've seen it in so many movies. I've seen so many hands played. You think I'd have some inkling of how to play.
That's why card games in movies don't really work because it's hard to follow if you don't know, especially if you don't know how to play the game.
Right.
But even
face cards are 0, and you try to get the highest number. So 9 is the best.
You do know how to play. Can we play Baccarat some night? I think we should
try it.
I want to. Yeah.
Can we dress like Bond characters when we play?
I think it's a good idea. I will.
Yeah.
I'll wear a collarless. I'll wear a Nehru jacket.
You just shave your head and you have a wicked scar on your eye.
Also, we didn't talk about the Mini Driver.
Mini Driver
has a very tiny role in this before she was.
I really like what the actor who plays Zukovsky does. He's like a good, just little bit character, little character actor thing. He does a good job, and she's perfect for that scene too because of it.
Right, and this is what I think. In the next 2 years, she was in Big Night and Sleepers and Grosse Pointe Blank and Good Will Hunting. So she was about to become a huge star. At this point, she'd only done Circle of Friends with Alan Cummings.
I think I read they only gave her $4,000 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a relative unknown. She'd been in Circle of Friends, which was a big hit, but mostly because Chris O'Donnell was in it. And now that I think back on it, that movie took place in Ireland, and I think maybe Chris O'Donnell had an Irish accent in that movie. Can you imagine Chris O'Donnell doing an accent of any kind?
Just stop. I won't sleep tonight.
Don't do it. Don't do that to
we
him.
also haven't talked about Brad Whitaker or Jack Wade. I mean,
Joe Don Baker.
Yeah,
Joe Don Baker's great.
Much more comfortable in this role.
With a name like Joe Don Baker, how could you do anything wrong? You just got a sweet name.
You could play Brad Whitaker.
Yeah, but that wasn't that bad.
Comically inept bad guy.
He's really good at this.
He works better in this role.
They have a thing where he asks him about gardening, and apparently he had another scene where part of his character was to just be really into gardening. But we didn't get it.
But they cut out that scene.
Yeah.
So all we get is him randomly asking Bond about gardening, and then in every other scene he's in, he sees a plant and he says, "Tobacco plants."
Yeah, exactly. Which was really confusing unless you're paying really close attention.
Hyacinth. Just like names of plant.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Pukaki.
just watching it today, I was like,
I'll be darned.
why the hell does he say tobacco plant before he starts talking?
It's just complete non sequiturs. On the cutting room floor, as they say.
Yeah. Is that it?
Is it? I don't know.
I think my takeaways from watching this movie again are that I never realized how fast, like once we're in the end sequence, like at the satellite dish, shit happens so fast. It's just like, boom, the pen goes off, explosions, like the whole place is falling apart.
Running, fist fight,
yeah,
dangling from the edge of the thing.
And it's
Trevelyan
over.
falls off.
Yeah,
and then we get like the Sam Raimi post-production
Push in,
zoom
yeah.
as the thing comes out and crushes
But
him.
that is a success of this movie where others have failed.
Oh yeah,
You get like the same scene in some other movies that lasts like an hour.
This movie, what it doesn't have that other Bond films have, is like that final sequence. Like
yeah.
I feel like this movie.
Well, this is that. They just do it faster.
Well, I think in a different Bond movie, like we would have the whole satellite dish sequence, and then like Bond would get on that helicopter and fly somewhere else, and have another 20-minute action scene, like getting the other bad guy.
It would, exactly. Trevelyan would escape when they blew up the satellite dish, and then Bond would go after him.
We have to
and
go
we'd
get
this
him.
other
Yeah.
extended thing.
Yeah.
It did a good job of just keeping up the intensity and ending on a bang and on a high note, which, like you said, so many of these, I think some of my lowest ratings have been on ones that just didn't know how to just finish strong.
Yeah.
And this one, either because they dragged on too long or just because the villains weren't compelling enough to give a good conflict at the end. This one pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
But then it did have a weird sort of, it just did trickle off. Like I remember loving the gag of the Marines popping up out of nowhere when I was a kid. And I still do like that a lot of there's like Marines everywhere and they just don't see them. But then they hop into helicopters and then you get this weird extended shot of the helicopters taking off. And it's just like, you hear the helicopter noises, they take off. And then at some distance, that terrible song starts.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
the
wait,
song, though.
is
That
that
song's
it?
so
Is
bad.
there's no button? That's it?
There's
Okay,
no button,
I guess.
no funny button. Yeah.
I mean,
well, the funny button was kind of Boris.
Boris, the I'm invincible, and then they are making out there, and he's like, "There's nobody around for miles," and it turns out everyone's there. But but it was a kind of a strange ending for a Bond movie,
But a good ending, but strange in the sense that it wasn't like goofy, like we were expecting it to be. you know?
Yep. Want to get to our 00 scales?
Sure.
Let's do it. You go first.
All right. I think in many ways this is like the perfect Bond movie. They kind of figured it out. It doesn't stray too far from the formula overall, but it isn't coasting on nostalgia either. You know, they kind of mess around within the established tropes, but they always delivered what we wanted to see, which is cool sets, exotic locales, crazy gadgets, exciting action set pieces, solid supporting players, a little bit of humor, and a good finale with some good bad guys. You throw a tux on that and you're good to go. So I know it was enjoyable when I saw it in the theaters 20-something years ago. I think I've enjoyed it every time I've seen it since, and I enjoyed it this week, so I gave it a 009.
Okay. Who goes
Solid.
next?
I'll jump off that.
Okay.
I agree with everything you said. I feel like I'm trying to not let nostalgia be a factor here, but it is too.
Why?
Because I think that will.
Colin
sway.
votes entirely on nostalgia.
yeah. Why?
Why let anything affect your decision?
Yeah.
You can always come back next podcast and be like, I renounce my claims.
This is for me when I look at all those Bond movies on Netflix or whatever, and I scroll through, I always want to play this one, and I feel like the beginning just ropes you in so easily, and throughout, there's no point where I say all right, I've had enough, and I can turn it off. I love the beginning, I love the ending. I'm lukewarm about certain parts of the middle. That's really its biggest weakness for me is those couple of lulls. Where it just slows down almost to a point of oh my God, what's happening? We need to keep going. Other than that, I love the score mostly, except for that one chase scene. I love the actors. I love the villains. I feel like it's not cheesy. It has very little cheese, if at all. I like the introduction of Judi Dench. And I love the song. You know what? Fuck you, Harris.
The Experience of Love.
Not that song. Not that one. The Bono song. I question, is 0010 a thing? Can a movie... Is 009 the highest, or is
It's the highest we've given so far, but I think in theory we can. I think it would be. I don't know if it would be 0010. I think
just 010?
010.
I don't like the sound of that though.
Yeah, it's not as good.
010.
But I mean, I've always operated under the idea that we could go up to 10.
I think for me, this is the movie that all other Bond films are compared to.
Fuck it, it doesn't have to make sense. 0010.
And for that, it's 0010 for me. I'm sorry.
Nice. Well, I'm not going to give it a 0010 because the perfect Bond movie has yet to be made.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to say.
I thought there'd be like a response to that, but okay.
No, it has been made. You're looking at it right there.
No, it has yet to be made, and there's one thing those movies are lacking.
Colin Shaw.
It's got 2 thumbs and it's sitting right here. For those of you listening at home, I use my thumbs to point at myself.
I thought you were going to say the one thing this movie's lacking is Moneypenny, the original actress.
Oh, man.
Dig her up, put her in the next one.
Is she still alive?
Like now or in this movie?
No,
At the time of this movie?
now.
I don't think so, but she might be.
They should have a scene where all the money pennies are in it.
Just a big money penny orgy. That's Colin's idea for the 0010 Bond movie. This doesn't even have Bond in it.
No, that's right. That's humor.
She sadly died
Oh.
at the age of 80 in 2007.
Damn.
2007. She might still be fresh enough to
Oh,
Oh
give her a
my
cameo.
God.
007.
Just kidding.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Yeah, that's right. She died in 007.
Yeah.
All right, Colin, what's your
I'm in shock. So I gave it a 009 because I also like it a lot. Nostalgia affects my judgment and
And everything in your life.
And everything in my life. This opened the door to, many more great experiences of watching movies. Not that I didn't already like movies, but it opened like another door. Like if there was already a door, I went through one door, but there's like another door in there that has other stuff. But maybe you could get to the other stuff by going through a different door, but this door was open for me.
You go around the
Can
wall.
you talk more about doors?
Are there any windows?
Yeah, there's doors.
When you discovered porn, is that like a door also? A different kind of movie?
How dare you?
We don't talk about the porn door.
Yeah, okay.
We keep that door tightly closed.
I don't know. On that note, so I mean, something I read was that, there was a lot of talk about what to make of how to make Bond, interact with females in the 90s and like after not making movies for years. And they went ahead and said like he doesn't have to be PC. But I still think they made an effort to make this Bond different. And there's progress and there's a different kind of attitude. I don't know. I think from what I've already said in the podcast and stuff, like my idea for James Bond is he's not that sexist. He's not like my ideal character for James Bond, not what we've seen or what we haven't seen or whatever, is like he's not that sexist because he's not problematically aggressive. He's just like likes to do it a lot and does it a lot because he's a fictional character.
Right. Really, personality-wise, he's a total beta.
No, that's not. No, why you got to do that? But I don't know how you guys feel about whether or not this is some kind of progress to like neither being alpha nor beta, but being like a real, a fantasy character, but also one that doesn't have to be not PC as in he's a dick, but he's just like the kind of character that isn't always politically correct. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's one thing that Roger Moore tried to do when he was in the role was always make Bond a gentleman, which I think was sort of, he didn't always succeed because I think sometimes they were writing against that a little bit. But that was the idea of making sure that whatever hijinks he got up to, he was always, trying to comport himself like a gentleman who would think of somebody else's, feelings and wishes. And, obviously there's the Connery era had some consent issues. But I think since then there's been sexism, certainly. But I think that they've progressed pretty admirably, for their times. And I think this is sort of a big step forward, mostly coming from, I think, like you said, the script phase. I think the writers really concentrated on giving the female characters a lot more power and a lot more personality than they had in the past.
Where you at on that, Matt? Agree? Disagree?
I agree.
All right. I thought we could talk about it a little bit. I mean, we didn't have to make the whole podcast about that.
License to watch?
Yes, license to watch.
Issued.
I have one more thing I want to bring up, and I want to get our listeners involved. So one interesting thing I read about this movie is that there were certain small edits that were made for censor reasons, and in the UK, a lot of the cuts were having to do with head injuries. There's a part apparently where Bond rabbit punches Onatopp, and he punches her in the back of the head and knocks her out or whatever. And then there's another part where he claps his hands on the sides of Trevelyan's head and before punching him or whatever. And this is interesting to me because I've heard of this before, that the UK has a problem with head injuries. Whereas here we cut out, if anything's going to get censored on television, it's going to be nudity or extreme gore. But over there, they care very much so about people getting hurt in the head area, which is very interesting to me. Is that a thing, UK listeners? Can you write us at Bondcast, jamesbondcast@gmail.com, or go to the James Bond subreddit and reply to the posting of this episode? I want to know more about this UK head injury.
Is that why whenever I see crowds of people from the UK, there's always a bunch of them wearing helmets, like little kids' bike helmets?
What? Maybe.
That isn't actually true.
I actually read.
I think that'd be funny if it was, though.
I read recently.
Just adults walking around in bike helmets all the time.
Yeah.
They're very concerned about CTE over there.
I read recently that any films made in England they made it a big thing there that you can't make people who have facial scars or facial any sort of deformity or scarring, they can't be a villainous character or put in a negative light.
They absolutely can't, or they. It's not what they're going for.
Is it a carbon footprint where you can offset it? If you have a good one, then you can also have a bad one, a good guy with a huge scar on his face and a bad guy with one eye.
Or is it you can do it, but Twitter's mad or whatever,
Yeah, it's looked down upon.
Okay.
It's they want to make a change over there. I don't know, maybe they're really there's a stigma about people who have facial scars, people treat them I also heard that in the UK redheaded people, they really treat them when you're kids mainly, they get picked on a lot.
Not how we joke about it.
Right. It's to the next level, the way we would maybe treat little fat kids.
I have heard in Europe that's more the ginger is more of a separate kind of racial stereotype than it is here, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. I always assume everyone with an eye patch is evil, and I think that I've been pretty consistently right on that one. So I'm going to
might be onto something there.
I'm going to keep it up.
What about Nick Fury?
Yeah, I got my doubts. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out. I don't know.
I mean, he's not a Skrull, hopefully.
As far as we know.
All right, spoilers. All right, on that note, I think we need to wrap this up.
All right.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please rate us on iTunes, give us a shout out on social media, or hit up our inbox, which I already mentioned, Bondcast, jamesbondcast@gmail.com, or go to the James Bond subreddit where I post all the episodes, and let us know what you think. That's it. Bond will return in...
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Such enthusiasm. Tomorrow Never Die.
I got a little anxious. I was like, is he asking me? Is he? Oh, I got to answer.
He's looking at me.
I didn't even volunteer anything because I was like, shit, I forgot.
I don't remember what it is. I don't know. I don't watch these movies. All right.
The next one. Duh.
Well,
See,
faded out.
bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Bond.